This is Colin O'Keefe for LXBN TV. Law firms Rudin McCloskey and Dewey and LeBoeuf both recently faced intense financial distress before eventually filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, though each took a different path to getting there. Joining me now to explain the lessons we can learn from the dichotomy of their situations is Isaac Markashamer of Berger Singerman and their blog, The Business Reorganization Report. Isaac, to start, give us some background on the differences between the two Chapter 11 bankruptcies. What happened and how do they differ with each firm?
Sure, thank you, Colin. First of all, the obvious difference is that Dewey LeBoeuf was a much larger firm than Rudin McCloskey was. Rudin was one of the largest Florida firms, while Dewey was at one point a huge national firm. That said, the real differences are how the leadership of the firms approached the situations they found themselves in. The Rudin leadership acknowledged that it was in distress, acknowledged that the firm was in distress, and made a concerted effort to talk to its stakeholders. And when you're dealing with a professional services firm, the largest asset are the humans. And they're able to get up and literally walk out the door, which is what happened to Dewey as soon as folks started to find out that there may be problems, like rats on a ship. The associates, the partners began looking for exits and places to go. Rudin, on the other hand, informed the partners, talked to them, and did the best it could under very trying circumstances to convince them that staying together as a cohesive unit would be the best for them individually in the long term, would be the best for their clients in the long term, and would be the best for the stakeholders and the creditors of the firm. That allowed Rudin to implement a strategy with the assistance of its counsel and its other advisors to sell the firm as a going concern. The first time that we're aware of that that's happened in the nation, whereas now what you see with Dewey several years down the line is a law firm that's basically the carcass being picked over how you're going to sell chairs and desks and computers, and you weren't able to capitalize on the sale of the human capital, which is the biggest asset in a professional services firm. So with that said, I think those are the major differences in the two approaches to the firms, and obviously from a employee stakeholder perspective, the Rudin approach has been significantly better in terms of the length of time it's taken to get in and then have an orderly exit for the partners who were there, as well as for the clients who were there. The creditors should be getting paid sooner in Rudin than they were in Dewey, but that's the largest differences.
Interesting. So, second, for firms who are in financial distress, nowadays we're seeing a lot of trouble with larger law firms. What lessons do these two differing situations with Dewey and Rudin present for large law firms who may be facing financial distress?
Sure. The largest difference, or the biggest takeaway, is the communication aspect and the recognition from firm leadership that something needs to get done. So, and the lessons, by the way, apply not just to law firms, but they apply to any firm or any business where its human capital is the biggest part of its business, because you can't make people work for you anymore. Thanks to Abraham Lincoln, that sort of stopped. So now you have to understand that you need to incentivize and you need to create alignment among those stakeholders. So there's a couple of things that those leaders need to be aware of. First, they obviously need to understand the status of their business. They need to be on top of it, and they need to recognize when distress is starting to occur, and they need to understand that projections, however great they may be, are nothing more than simply projections, and you should hope for the best, but you should understand that planning for the worst is part of what leadership is. And planning includes aligning your stakeholders, making sure you understand that the cost of doing nothing, what I call the cost of doing nothing, is fully internalized. So if you choose to continue to act the way you're acting that has caught you into distress, and you're going to ignore things, there is going to be a cost later on in literally doing nothing. Now, if you take a proactive approach, you can eliminate that cost, and you can sometimes turn it into a benefit, and you can sometimes ameliorate the ill effects of the distress that you find yourself in. So it's very important for leadership to do that. It needs to identify trusted advisors who are not just only trusted, but who are also competent at dealing with the situations they're in, and they need to be folks that can be brought in at the right time. It's not always at the very, very beginning, but it's generally well before the end. To go back to the Dewey and Rudin examples, the Dewey case, by the time it arrived in bankruptcy, or by the time outside professionals were involved, was what we in the bankruptcy world call DOA. It was dead on arrival. Here, they're in Rudin, by contrast, because folks were involved at the appropriate time, an exit strategy was able to be planned for and implemented.
Again, that was Isaac Marketshamer of Berger Singerman and the Business Reorganization Report. For more of his commentary, be sure to visit businessreorganizationreport.com, and for curated insight from the LexBlog Network's thousands of authors, along with more video interviews, visit us at lxbn.com. Thank you, Isaac.
Thanks, Colin.